Second item on our Sunday Six was the instant classic between the Lions and Vikings at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. We talked about it all week. It's one of the games of the week, one of the games of the early season. Minnesota Vikings, one of the last unbeatens left in the NFL. Easily the biggest surprise of the first half of this season, going against the preseason favorite, the prohibitive pick to potentially get to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, the Detroit Lions. They lock horns in a Week 7 division matchup. Lions escape with a 31-29 win, and I think the game itself even over-delivered on that very fun scoreline. A game of crazy swings. Minnesota coming off the bye week, they get out to a hot start, 10-0 early in the first quarter off some Lions miscues. Then Jared Goff and Detroit just catch fire. They dominated the middle portion of this game. They're up 28-17 late. And honestly, it looked like Detroit was going to ride this to a fairly comfortable win. Like I said, it's hard for games that are this hyped to deliver all the way through. And with as little left to play as 10 minutes, it looked like Detroit probably had this in the bag. Then a David Montgomery fumble is recovered by Ivan Pace. It's returned for a touchdown, and all hell breaks loose. The Vikings have a late lead. It's up to Jared Goff to change it, and wouldn't you know that he does. Down 29-28, he leads a field goal drive. And who better to deliver the 44-yard field goal in the final seconds than Jake Bates, the UFL kicker, who had played for Michigan's UFL team over the summer, one of the best players in the spring league. The Lions sign him over the summer, and he hits not quite a walk-off field goal, but a game-winning field goal. And after all that surprise, credit to the Vikings, an amazing game played by them, but the Lions are back on top in the NFC North, just like so many people thought they would be. This division just continues to be one of the most fun things in the NFL. So many fun storylines to get to, and I had a chance to go in depth with Amin and Greg Olsen, who were on the call. Well, guys, when the game is that good, there's 100 different places I could start this, but I think what's going to stick with me is just the number of nails throws Jared Goff made over the course of this game. Big moments, third downs, whenever they needed it, he was there. What did you see from him today?
Yeah, I think we came in feeling like Jared Goff is playing about as well as anybody. You reiterated that a couple of times during the broadcast, Greg. And when the moments matter the most, he is about as cool as any quarterback playing the position in those spots. Right?
Yeah, and none bigger than on that last drive, that completion he has to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, the game's on the line. You're down on the clock. You got to get in field goal range. He did that time and time again. Pre-snap, moving protections, getting bodies on bodies. Post-snap, making the right throws, downfield, underneath. I'm not sure what else a quarterback could do. I mean, he's playing as well. We said it multiple times throughout the broadcast. He's playing as well, if not better, than any quarterback in football.
If he wasn't already in the MVP conversation, I think we can get ready for that after a game like this. On the other side of this, we talked a lot about the Lions losing Aiden Hutchinson. Obviously, the Vikings had their moments. They had plenty of big plays, but to buckle down in the fourth quarter and get the stops that they did, 4 sacks of Sam Darnold, felt like they really rose to the occasion without Hutchinson.
Yeah, not only the pass rush, but the interior guys, too. Dan Campbell told us in our meetings this week, everybody's got to do it. I need a little bit more from this player and that player and this player, and that's how we'll make up for the loss of Hutchinson.
Yeah, and I think that's really what we saw. They weren't perfect. They weren't awesome. I mean, obviously the Vikings scored, on the defensive, fumble return for the touchdown. But all in all, when they needed to make plays, when they needed to get that 3-and-out stop to give themselves a chance to go down and kick the field goal, they forced the incomplete pass on third down, and they get the ball back. And, of course, rest is history. So they have to clean it up. They have to figure out a way to get more consistent pressure. But at the end of the game, when they needed to, they made that pocket messy. They got after Darnold just good enough, and that's all it took today.
You spend all week hoping that a game that looks this good on paper will deliver, and boy, did it ever. Adam, Greg, love catching up with y'all. Thanks.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Dave.
it. Thanks, Dave.
Plenty of takeaways coming out of such a fun game, but I think the conversation has to start with the quarterback in Detroit, Jared Goff. And I don't think it's too early anymore. It's essentially the halfway point of the season. We'll be headed into week 8. And Jared Goff, with this performance, I think has to be your front runner for NFL MVP. I know the odds are going to say he's tied for fourth best. There's still going to be some stiff competition. But when you're just talking about what everybody's done to this point, Jared Goff making a statement. And I think it matters who it was against, because this is the Minnesota defense. Brian Flores' unit has been the talk of the early half of the season. They've made life miserable on so many people. They got the best of Brock Purdy. They got the best of CJ Stroud. Jared Goff goes into Minneapolis, completes 22 of 25 for 280, 2 pass touchdowns. Talked about it with Greg and Adam, just unflappable on the money downs, third down conversion, ripping the ball over the middle of the field, looking absolutely fearless. And he's been playing well, don't get me wrong, all season long. Really, other than the exceedingly baffling loss to Tampa Bay where they went 1 of 7 in the red zone. This has been the norm for Jared Goff, and certainly over the last 3-4 weeks. This was his third straight performance with a passer rating of 140 or better. Only 3 other quarterbacks since the AFL-NFL merger in 1970 have managed to do that. It was Roger Staubach, just a Hall of Famer, Dallas Cowboys legend, are seen as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the game's history. Kurt Warner in 1999, which was the year he won MVP for the then St. Louis Rams, and Aaron Rodgers in 2011 when the Green Bay Packers went 15-1 and he also won MVP. These numbers are not a mirage. I could list off everything he's done over the last month, but first I want to see how he compares to what the Minnesota Vikings have been doing, because I think that's the crux of this argument, is just how well Minnesota's played this year under Brian Flores. So we put these numbers together. If you're watching, you can see it. The Vikings went on the bye in week 6, so they played just 5 games before Sunday. They were allowing opposing quarterbacks to a 60.4 completion percentage, 6.3 yards per attempt, a passer rating of just 70. These guys, like I said, they've been making life miserable on a lot of different quarterbacks. Jared Goff doubled up all of that, essentially. 88%, just 3 incompletions on the day, 11.2 yards per attempt, literally doubling these stats up. And like I said, a passer rating that is quite literally double what Flores' defense had been allowing going in. And this is just becoming the norm. Remember, the Monday night game against Seattle, where Goff didn't let a ball hit the ground, diced up Dallas last week, completed 72% of his passes. And now this, the coup de grace, I think, because this is his best game against the best level of competition that he's played on the defensive side of the ball so far, completing 74% of his passes on the season. He's on pace for 4,500 yards. He's getting the ball spread around to all of the different options in this offense. 296 yards per game over the last 3 weeks, 7 touchdowns, no turnovers. He hasn't turned the ball over since that week 3 win out in Phoenix against the Arizona Cardinals. He's your MVP frontrunner. And I know Josh Allen's playing really well. I know Lamar Jackson is playing out of his mind. He's arguably playing better than he played last year when he did win MVP. Not handing anybody the award in week 7, but we do need to recognize a guy who was, we've been over all this before, but cast off, traded away from the LA Rams, seen as a guy who was an impediment to a championship. All that stuff is true. And here he is, not just revitalized in Detroit. That's last year's storyline, playing like one of the absolute best quarterbacks in the NFL. He deserves to be on that short list for MVP consideration. And with all the weapons in Detroit's offense and this offensive line, if Minnesota can't slow him down, it's hard to think up a defense that's going to.